Utilizing your talents to make a measurable and meaningful difference in the world is essentially important if we're all going to make progress towards a more perfect union. Nick Bracks uses his mental health journey and struggle with mental illness as an inspiration to inspire others to start a positive conversation about the effects of mental health and mental health awareness. He's the founder of Move Your Mind, a mental health media company with a mission of entertaining the masses about mental health to inspire and create positive change. This is accomplished by digital well-being courses, seminars, celebrity and expert interviews, and other forms of storytelling. However, that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the story of this Australian actor and former model turned mental health advocate. Bracks is a well-rounded individual with plenty of interests, hobbies, and he brings a positive and refreshing perspective on the conversation surrounding men's mental health, vulnerability, emotion, and so much more. It's also estimated by Mental Health America that globally, 19.86% of the population is experiencing some form of mental illness. This is equivalent to approximately 50 million Americans, 4.91% of which are experiencing a severe mental illness. Bracks joined me this week to have an in-depth and consequential conversation about breaking down inferior walls of protection so that we can all get to the root of our emotion and mental health journey. I'm excited and intrigued to engage in conversation. So without further delay, I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. If you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, and I'm super excited to talk to you about your work in mental health, buddy. Great to see you today, and thank you so very much for being here.
Thank you for having me, and I'm really glad we get to have this conversation.
As am I, buddy, and I wanted just to give you the floor to sort of tell me all about the great work that you do with Move Your Mind. I know it's a media company that helps people really get inspired to have conversations about mental health. So I'm wondering if you can tell me about all the great work that you do.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. So I've been in the mental health space for over 10 years, and I fell into working in that area because I had my own battle with depression that played out publicly in Australia. And that led to me speaking in the media and sharing my story to try and help other people. And I found how important it was through doing that to be vulnerable and share conversations and stories. And that led over the last 10 years to working in that space and speaking at companies around the world, doing a couple of TED Talks, and eventually building Move Your Mind, where it's a media company where we have everything from doing a podcast, released a book last year. We create programs and learning tools for companies and schools, and I guess the main thing is our main mission is how do we educate as many people as we can on a broad level, and empower them with, practical things they can do, like such as how do I understand myself and, create new daily habits and actually understand how to do that, how to create a new behavior pattern. So yeah, that's essentially what it is. And the other area I've been involved in is, film and TV, and had sort of a career doing various things in Australia, and was on a soap opera, and um, trying to produce actually a TV show at the moment, and always looking to, grow in that area and combine that with the mental health work.
Well, Nick, no one will ever accuse you of not being ambitious. That's for sure, right?
That's true, mate. They won't accuse me of that, at least.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing, right? Right? Keeps
I
you
think so.
young and relevant, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
Exactly.
yeah, absolutely. And Nick, tell me, based on your personal experience in life, story, buddy, how do you value or look at the concept of perseverance and inclusion?
Based on my experience, how do I look at perseverance?
How do you how do you define perseverance
Oh,
and the importance of inclusion?
yeah, I think, well, perseverance, resilience, I guess, I think is really important, and something that we all probably to learn about over time with life experience. And um, I think it's the only way you can actually have anything meaningful in your life, if you're willing to persevere with things. So it really means, I think what it means is doing something even when some days, you don't want to do it. And what was I going to say? So I've been barely sleeping this week. My mind's not working 100%. I apologize, but
Totally understandable.
what
Absolutely.
what I was going to say is, to be able to do that, um, you really need to. I think the important first step is, how do I understand, learn about myself and gain self awareness, and really spend enough time identifying my values, how I want to spend what do I want to dedicate my life to. Then you can persevere, because if you work that out, then you're going to be willing, even on the days where you are tired, or you're not feeling happy about things, or things all feel too overwhelming. You're still going to be willing to persevere, because deep down why you're doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nick, I want to share just a little bit about myself. One of the reasons I wanted to start this podcast, buddy, is because I was born with spastic quadriplegia cerebral palsy. Simply means that I don't have enough oxygen in my legs to walk normally. And one of the reasons I wanted to start this podcast is, mentally, from a mental health perspective, sometimes I deal with social isolation and being isolated from society. So I use this podcast as an extension to have positive conversations and to sort of eliminate the social isolation that I personally have in life. And I know that it's been important to you, as you mentioned, to have positive conversations about vulnerability and inclusion. So I'm wondering if you can relate to me on the importance to have positive conversations of inclusion as well.
Yeah, good. And I think that's amazing that you're doing that. Like, really, you know, commend you for going and doing what you're doing, and creating this platform and talking about that, because I can only imagine it would be really isolating, and people need to, we need to have these conversations so people can understand that everyone on a different level has their own obstacles. We all do, that we're dealing with. And like you just said, that's why I started doing what I'm doing as well, because I wanted to show people that it's okay to actually talk about having mental health issues. And if we're all really honest, on some level, we all do at different parts of our lives, have problems with different things. Often, though, we're taught to just push it away or feel shame and embarrassment about it and not go and get the help we need. And, how can you get help if you're not even willing to admit it yourself? And it can be seen as weakness, especially in men, to be vulnerable and talk about, show weakness or show perceived weakness. It's actually not weakness, but to talk about it. So I think, it's so important that, we have these kind of conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nick, I know you started your career, as you mentioned, in fashion and entertainment, and also led you to a modeling career as well overseas. And you use those experiences to sort of guide your mental health discussions in your life experience. So I'm wondering how those experiences impacted the work you do today.
Well, I guess it actually did lead. It really is what gave me the opportunity and put me on the path I'm in, because I was, this incredibly shy, timid kid that finished up at high school and, was afraid of my own shadow. And I dropped out of a course at university. I started abusing alcohol and using that to cope. So I'd be drinking myself into the ground. And then when I finally did go back to university, I could barely function. I was like so scared of life. And when I got through that period, I fell into modeling work, and then was on reality television shows. I was on Dancing with the Stars, was probably the one where it pushed me so far out of my comfort zone that it sort of broke me open. And then it gave me an opportunity to go and talk publicly about mental health. And that ended up giving me a huge platform in Australia, where I started becoming one of the go-to people, I guess, that they would get to speak about it in the media. And I got asked to speak at different events, and that was a springboard for me to really, go dive deep into doing it.
Yeah, and you talked earlier about the importance of men showing vulnerability and being emotional. So I'm just wondering if we can dive a little bit deeper into the importance of a guy showing emotion and vulnerability, and how important it is that you believe as men that we express ourselves.
I think it's critical. So, statistically, more men commit suicide than women, and I've seen it firsthand. Where I've talked in companies, especially in Australia, factories where you've got men that are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, even, that their whole life have never talked about this stuff. They've bottled it up, and you see firsthand the repercussion of that. Some of them even actually committing suicide in these organizations because they didn't talk about it. And it's critical, and it's improving. There's more conversation about it, but I think the public are a little bit misled in thinking that it's evolved further than it actually has, because on a public level, yes, in the media, there's a lot of talk about mental health and all that sort of thing. But when you really break down and look at communities and go and talk to people in different environments, you see that there's still enormous stigma. There's still huge, lack of understanding, and a lot of men that still feel like it's weak to talk about it and don't know how to. So I think it's absolutely critical. And I was listening to, my favorite podcast is Armchair Expert with Dax Shepard, and I love it because he talks very openly about being vulnerable, and he calls himself a vulnerboy, and he gets his other actors on there that are vulnerable, other men, and they call themselves vulnerboys, and I like it how they do that. So so maybe we can be vulnerboys as well.
Yeah, it's important to be authentic, isn't it?
It is. It is. It's very important.
Yeah, and then tell me, how do you think we can create more safer spaces for people in general to be more expressive with their mental health struggles? And when we look at the mental health progress we've made, what gives you the most confidence, and what are you most excited about?
Well, I think the way we can do it is on every single level have conversations like we're having right now. So what I mean by that is I don't think it's rocket science. And what's actually happened in this mental health space now is because it's become such a huge talked about topic globally now, which is kind of crazy, funny to see because I remember I got into it, 12 years ago, and it wasn't, a commercially good thing to get into. People weren't talking about it. It wasn't like this thing, this trending thing. It was actually quite taboo. So on that public level, I've seen it change to the point now where you've got people trying to do these multi-million-dollar tech startups, and they're trying to how do I just capitalize on this space. Some of them are great, but there's a lot of crap out there, and I feel like that all these shiny fancy things aren't actually the solution because at a core level it's just how do we just get honest and talk about this stuff and do that on every single level. So really it's grassroots work, I think, is what will change things. Physically going, talking to people, having them just realize that there is no silver bullet. There's no app or anything is going to completely transform your life forever. You've got to frickin' do the work yourself and just get honest. You don't have to be perfect. We never will be perfect. So I think, if you hear people saying that, that's you run a million miles. There's all these, coaches like Tony Robbins chanting, if you do, this 12-step program, you're going to be fine forever. It's all bullshit. It's like pretty simple. It's like, get honest. If you've got a problem, try and talk about it. Maybe you can't solve the whole problem. Maybe you can try and find a solution, but just do your best and be honest about it. And that's all we can do. And realize that no one's perfect. And anyone that says they're perfect is talking absolute crap.
Yeah, tell me, Nick, how do you define prosperity, and what's your definition of living a successful life?
Um, I would say my definition for that is just being at peace with yourself and living by your values and your purpose. So really finding what is it that I actually want to do in life. How do I want to live my life and living according to that. And finding joy in the day-to-day process of life rather than trying to live for other people and trying to live for the future and all that sort of thing. And I talk about this stuff, but I'm not the master of it. I like have my own issues and fall into this stuff on a daily basis a lot of the time, and have to continually try and navigate a path, the best, most healthy path for myself as well. But I think at the end of the day, I think the simple thing is if we can just be true to ourselves, then we'll be a lot happier.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nick, I know that you completed a full time acting course in film and
Yeah.
television studio international. So tell me about your acting career, buddy, because I know you've got several films to your name. You mentioned that you appeared in a soap opera. So tell me about the acting portion of your life, and your favorite acting memory as well.
Yeah, so I got into the acting a bit later in life. I got into that in my second half of my 20s, and yeah, I did a full-time course. And so my manager, he's still my manager in Australia actually. He he took me under his wing and he put me through his full-time course for free to sort of mentor me. And then I started doing classes after that full-time course for quite a long time. Um, and ended up on a Australian TV show called Neighbours on and off for a couple of years. Did some short films. I mean, involved in a Australian feature film called Salt Lake that hopefully, if they get all the financing done, should be filming next year. And then I'm trying to right now. The big thing for me is I'm really trying to actually make a lot of skits. I got into doing this recently around mental health. So trying to show the funny side of, ridiculous day-to-day situations. And on a broader level, I'm trying to also make a TV show that sort of dives into, similar topics. And that's what I'm really interested in. I love film and TV. Always love movies. I like the escapism of it. I like the storytelling. I like understanding things from different people's perspectives, and that's what appeals to me in acting. You've got to be able to, without judgment, try and understand. Like, to understand a character, you got to be able to look at their life, even if they've done negative things, look at their life without judging it and think, hang on, what happened? What was the chain of events that happened in this person's life to get them to where they are? And, what did that feel like? How did this all unfold? And it's really interesting. And it's been, I think doing acting is the best personal development thing anyone can do, because it's pretty scary at the beginning. You've got to get over your ego, perform in front of people, not know how things are going to unfold, embarrass yourself, and you just got to get over all of that, and learn. You got to learn. You become comfortable enough with yourself to be able to play other characters. So it really helps you break down a lot. And Hugh Jackman, who's one of my heroes, a big Australian actor, I've heard him in interviews talk about that a lot, where acting is, one of the best personal development things we can do. And I couldn't agree more. And I remember the first day of the full-time course, my manager saying to me, you're now going to have to undo 25 years of how you're going to have to unlearn 25 years of learning. And, what he meant by that was you're conditioned over your whole life to behave in a certain way, to only speak when you're told to speak, to suppress parts of yourself, to, fit into all these categories. You got to do acting, you got to undo all of that, because you need to be free to be creative and to be open and to, try things from different angles and not worry about all of that stuff. So once you actually go through that process, which is a continual one, you start to improve in other areas of life as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Nick, I wanted to talk to you about the importance of finding your passion and purpose, because outside of your acting and mental health journey, I know that you've also started some fashion labels with underwear and some other things. You've even dabbled in the restaurant space. So tell me about finding your passions and your passions in life as well.
I think I mean, I can only speak for myself, but for me, it's critical. So if I don't have passion and don't, see meaning in what I'm doing, I find it very hard to commit to doing it. And that probably is why, because, originally as a kid, I wanted to be a professional athlete. That was all I wanted to do. And I trained, crazy levels, 6 hours a day, to the point where, it delayed my physical development, and I had problems because I pushed myself too hard, but I was so committed to it. And then when that ended, I was really depressed because I didn't know what the hell I wanted to spend my life doing. And that actually led to me trying so many things, finishing at university, doing the TV shows, opening up a cafe, starting an underwear label, doing the modeling work, getting into acting, and doing, about 5 other companies in between. Had a health food company, had another startup in the wellness space at one point. I was involved in, all these different businesses, but which I think is critical because, it gives you a diverse life experience. But also, if you try enough things like that, you're eventually, you sort of, it's like a funnel through the process of elimination. You're finding, okay, what do I actually want to do? And if I didn't go on that journey, I wouldn't have, fallen into having that platform to talk about mental health, and found that as one of my passions, and, probably is my life's purpose to, until the day I die, everything I'm doing, how can I use this to help in mental health? And then on the acting side of things, I there's absolutely no chance I would have got into that if I didn't, again, push myself to try so many things. I wouldn't have fallen into it and found something that I genuinely want to do and spend my time doing. And yeah, I think it's really important to just not worry so much about what people think or being the best at something or embarrassing yourself or whether it's right or wrong. Just do things until you find what you really want. And no one can work that out for you. No life coach can sit there and tell you, this is what I think your life's purpose is. It's like you got to freaking find that out yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nick, I'm also curious to get your definition of diversity and equity because I do a lot of work in the diversity and equity and inclusion space. So when you look at a diverse society, how do you think we can better build bridges of inclusion and unity?
I mean, it's such a complicated thing, but I think really it's just again having conversations and normalizing it, and it just needs to get to a point where anything, if you, I guess in film, for example, it's diversity's become such a big thing now, which is great. People are from all walks of life now get opportunities, but it needs to just get to a point where it's as simple as it's not even really talked about or seen as something that we need to have a conversation about. It's just as simple as we all have the knowledge that whatever the thing is, if it's a film that's getting made, you're going to just cast the appropriate people for each, on that in that diverse sense, and that's it. It's not like a thing that we have to think about. It's just natural. You're hiring someone for a job, you hire based on who's the best candidate, and it's not even thought about. It needs to get to that level, which seems like it's moving in the right direction at least.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nick, when you look at sort of your life, how do you think you want to be remembered from a legacy standpoint?
Um, I want to be, I guess, remembered as someone that really did actually non with it without negotiation, really did tried to make an impact in the way I wanted to in life, and and really have made a big change in, if I really look back, like I hope that I do have this huge acting career, and I think I will, but that's not the part I think legacy wise that is as important. It's how much impact can I actually be part of making. So if I can look back and just see that, what, I just gave everything I could to with the resource that I had to impact as many lives as possible in some small way, then I think that's pretty amazing. And I've been lucky enough to have seen firsthand, through even some of the talks, actually physically seeing some people that didn't end their life because they attended a seminar that I was running. And I always say it's not because I did anything special, but just by it reminds you that by having that conversation, you just never know who's going to listen and who it's going to help. So I think if we can all, we can all do a similar version of that. And if you can help one person make some change in their life, that's pretty important.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nick, I know that you're coming to me today from New York, buddy, and you shared with me you were originally from Australia. So I'm curious, what do you miss most about being home and the differences between Australian and American culture? I'm fascinated.
Yeah, so I do miss a lot of things. I miss my family a lot. I mean, Australia is really beautiful, amazing beaches. We've got a family like holiday house on the coast, and I love it. It's so beautiful there. Probably the most beautiful place in the world, almost from my perspective, I guess, because I've been going there my whole life. But it is stunning. And Australian life is pretty laid back. I guess the difference is, it's on a social level very different. Like Australia's systemically a lot different. America, it's more hustle and bustle, and it can get pretty tiring. It's like New York is pretty crazy. Like I like it, but I don't think I could be here forever. So I miss a lot of those things.
Yeah, and my final question for you, Nick, is how do you define fun in how do you define fun in life, and how do you celebrate the wins that you have in life as well?
I probably don't celebrate the wins enough, and I think you really should, because it's important to, you know, acknowledge small wins. And our natural tendency can be, whatever, what's next. But yeah, it is important, and I think like just to sort of, give yourself a break sometimes, and like remind yourself what you had to go through to achieve something is so important. So I try to do that by just acknowledging things, but often don't do it enough. And then I think fun in life is just, again, doing things that you really care about. I think fun isn't, going out drinking, partying, that kind of stuff. It's more doing things authentic to yourself. So it might be just spending time with people you care about, going into nature, exercising, I don't know, having a nice meal, whatever, like just things like that, that I think is what I enjoy doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nick, finally tell me, if people want to get connected with your buddy, what's the best way they can do that?
So the best way, they can go to my website, which is nickbracks.com, or they can find me on Instagram. So my Instagram's just Nick Bracks. And yeah, if they want to check out more about Move Your Mind, you can also go to moveyourmind.me, where got a new website for that coming soon, and community programs, and my books on my website, and a whole lot of things like that. A podcast as well, if they want to listen to that. So yeah, they can go there.
Well, fabulous, Nick. I really think it's fundamentally important that we have continuing conversations about the importance of mental health awareness. I really want to commend you for the work that you've done in this space and for engaging in conversation with me this morning. It's most appreciated.
Thank you so much, Kevin. It's so nice to meet you, and really, I admire you, mate. Like, for what you're doing, like it's really, really impressive, and I think you should keep going and push it as far as you can, because you're going to help so many people. So I think really, really great that you're doing this.